I stood at the doorway of the basement, suitcase in hand, the air heavy with mildew and the faint smell of old paint. My son, Daniel, smiled awkwardly, gesturing toward the narrow wooden stairs. "It's just for a little while, Ma," he said. "You'll have privacy, peace and quiet." Privacy. That's what they called it now. I stepped down slowly, one creaking stair at a time. My knees ached. They always did in the cold, but I didn't say anything. I'd raised Daniel, too. Be polite, respectful, ambitious. And he had become all those things. Just not to me anymore. The basement was small and dim. A narrow bed with a faded floral sheet sat in the corner. There was a lamp, one shelf, and a microwave perched precariously on a mini fridge. "See?" His wife Liana chirped behind him. "You've got everything. You'll be super comfortable." Super comfortable. I smiled faintly and nodded. "It's more than enough," I said. My voice didn't even tremble. It should have. But I had grown used to being quiet. They didn't offer to help me unpack. Daniel said he had a Zoom meeting, and Liana had to take their son Max to piano class. Soon, I was alone. Me and the hum of the fridge. I sat on the bed and looked around. No windows. A single bulb overhead. And a heater that clicked more than it warmed. I pulled out the framed photo I always kept near my late husband, Thomas. Smiling in his Sunday sweater, I whispered, "Well, Tom, this is it." He would have hated this. He would have said something, fought for me. But he was gone. I had nowhere else to go. Dinner that night was quiet. I wasn't invited upstairs. Not really. Liana had brought down a plate of spaghetti and a paper napkin. "Hope you don't mind eating here," she said with a syrupy smile. "It's just easier with Max's allergies and everything." Max was allergic to cats. I was not a cat, still. I thanked her. Ate alone. Washed the plate in the tiny bathroom sink next to the boiler the next morning. I woke to the sound of footsteps above. Laughter. Coffee being brewed. I waited and waited. At 10, I slowly climbed the stairs. "Oh," Liana said, startled, catching me at the top step. She stood in the hallway, arms crossed. "We were just heading out." "I thought I'd make some eggs," I said. Her lips tightened. "It's just the kitchen's kind of a mess. Maybe later, okay?" She didn't wait for me to answer, just grabbed her purse and left. I went back downstairs. I microwaved a frozen waffle I'd found in the freezer downstairs. I sat on the bed again and stared at the wall. And that's how most days went. Weeks passed like a slow drip. Daniel barely looked me in the eye anymore. Always in a rush. Always apologizing. But never really changing anything. "Work is crazy, Ma," he'd say. I wish things were different. But they weren't, because they didn't need to be for him. Sometimes Max came down to say hi. He'd sit on the edge of the bed, swinging his legs. "Why don't you come upstairs more?" he asked once. I smiled, brushing his hair back. "Because Grandma's too old to climb stairs all the time?" He nodded, like it made sense. "'Kay, but I miss your pancakes." "So did I, baby." So did I. One Sunday, I heard them talking in the kitchen, voices carrying through the vents. "She just sits down there all day," Liana whispered. "I'm tired of tiptoeing. This is our house." She helped with the down payment. Daniel muttered. "So that was ages ago. It's barely even here." A sharp pause. "We should look into care homes." Before it's too late. My breath caught. My fingers curled around the edge of the bed. A care home. Thrown out like expired. Milk. After everything I had paid for Daniel's university. Cooked his meals during exam weeks. Worked night shifts when his father was ill, just so he wouldn't feel the weight of it. I had mortgaged our old house to help him buy this one. And now, I was furniture to be quietly removed. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat with the lights off, hands resting in my lap, staring at nothing. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just remembered. Thomas had always said, "Don't give more than they're willing to remember." I gave anyway, okay, because I was a mother. But I wasn't just a mother anymore. I was a woman who still had her name on the deed. And it was time I remembered that. The days grew quieter, somehow even more than before. Liana had stopped knocking when she brought meals. She'd just leave them outside the basement door like offerings to something that lived below. Sometimes I didn't even hear her come. Just found a plate of cold food waiting for me, like a reminder. You're not wanted upstairs. One morning. Decided I'd had enough. I climbed the stairs slowly, careful with every step. The house above felt warmer, brighter, alive. I stepped into the kitchen just as Liana turned from the stove. Her expression flickered surprise, then something colder. "Oh," she said, brushing invisible crumbs from her apron. "Everything." "Okay." "I thought I'd make some tea," I replied gently, moving toward the cupboard where I knew the mugs were kept. She blocked me. "Actually, I just cleaned the counters." "Would you mind using the kettle downstairs today? Just easier." You know, I looked at her, really looked 20 years younger than me. It's perfect hair, perfect posture, the kind of woman who always corrected people at restaurants. Okay, now, she was correcting me in my own son's home. But I didn't say anything. I just turned and walked back down. Again, it wasn't always like this. When Daniel was young, he used to write me letters. To the best mom in the world, still had them, folded neatly in a box I kept in my suitcase. He used to cry when I left for night shifts, said he couldn't sleep without my stories. Now he barely remembered to say goodnight, my birthday. Came and went without a word, no card. No knock. No voice calling from upstairs. Just the faint sound of laughter, clinking glasses, and the smell of takeout Chinese food. I sat on my bed, the photo of Thomas on my lap, and whispered, "We always celebrated, didn't we?" The year he died, Daniel and Liana had brought over a cake. Max had smeared chocolate all over his cheeks, and Thomas had sung off-key. I had felt for a moment like I wasn't alone. Now I was in a basement with a flickering bulb, listening to my family celebrate something, anything, without me. I tried to talk to Daniel the next morning. He was in a rush. As always, laptop under one arm, phone to his ear. "Daniel?" I called softly. He glanced at me, then past me. "I've got 5 minutes, Ma. What is it?" "I just wanted to ask if I could maybe use the laundry upstairs. The washer down here is leaking." He sighed. "Liana just cleaned the area. Can't it wait?" "It's been leaking for 3 days." Another sigh. Longer this time. "I'll get someone to look at it. Just leave it for now, okay?" He walked away before I could answer. The only time I felt human was when Mrs. Core, the neighbor from across the street, stopped by. She was in her 60s, sharp-tongued and sharp-eyed. She rang the bell one afternoon and asked for me by name, Liana. Opened the door and said I was resting. Mrs. Core narrowed her eyes, then wake her up. I haven't seen her in weeks. Eventually, I made my way upstairs. Mrs. Core gave me a look, one that said she knew exactly what was going on. She hugged me tightly, whispered, "You don't deserve this." We sat on the porch for a few minutes, sipping lukewarm tea Liana had reluctantly brewed. Mrs. Core told me about her garden, about her son in Toronto. I smiled and nodded, grateful for the sound of my name on someone's lips. "I see the lights on in your basement window," she said quietly. "All night sometimes." I didn't respond. "Whatever you're planning," she added, patting my hand, "don't wait too long." That night, I looked through the box of documents Thomas and I had stored before he passed. Bank statements, deed papers, and tucked inside a manila envelope, the one with a red tab was the original purchase. Agreement for this house. His signature, mine, not Daniel's, not Liana's, and next to that, a notarized agreement from 6 years ago, when I'd used my savings to quietly buy out the remaining loan after Thomas passed. I had never told Daniel. He assumed he owned the house now, that they were doing me a favor letting me stay, but legally, 'twas still mine. I traced my name slowly with a finger, feeling the rough edge of the ink. They had forgotten who I was. It was time I reminded them. It happened on a Tuesday. Liana called me upstairs. That alone was strange. She hadn't called for me in weeks. Usually, she sent texts through Daniel or tapped lightly on the door like I was a distant tenant. But today, she greeted me at the basement steps with that fake, too-wide smile. There you are. We need your signature for something, just a small formality. She moved fast, guiding me to the dining table where Daniel sat with a stack of papers. He stood when I entered, pulling out a chair for me like we were a happy family again. Hey, Ma, glad you're up. Nothing major, just some refinancing paperwork. So we can renovate the upstairs bathroom? I sat slowly. You need my signature for that? Daniel gave a quick laugh. Yeah, just technicalities. Your name's still on the original title, so the bank wants your authorization. Nothing changes. We're just shifting the loan to a new rate. Liana chimed in. Lower interest, better terms. It helps all of us. I looked down at the pages. My name was there in legal print. Still part owner. Still relevant. Liana handed me a pen. It'll take 2 seconds. I didn't move. Instead, I folded my hands neatly in my lap and said, I'd like to read it first. Daniel shifted. Sure, of course. He said it like someone offering soup to a drowning person. I skimmed the first page, then the second. My eyes slower than they used to be, but still sharp. It wasn't just refinancing. They were transferring ownership. Full control, full deed into Daniel's name. You didn't mention this, I said quietly. Daniel scratched his neck. Well, I figured it's implied. I mean, we live here. You're retired. It makes sense to consolidate. To push me out? No. Liana laughed too brightly. It's just paperwork. It's just still have your space. In the basement, I closed the folders, stood up, and gave them both a smile they didn't recognize. I'll think about it. Liana opened her mouth, but Daniel waved her off. Sure, take your time, Ma. They assumed I was being slow, old, weak, but I wasn't. I went back downstairs and pulled out my own folder, the one with the deed I had updated quietly years ago when Thomas passed. The house was legally half mine. And with a single signature mine, it could be all mine, so I called Mr. Farrows, our old lawyer. He remembered me right away. Mrs. Khan, it's been years. How's retirement? Lonely, I said honestly, and about to get interesting. By Friday, the paperwork was done, ownership transferred, final filed. The house, my house, now bore one name, mine. Not because I wanted revenge, because I needed dignity, because the woman in the mirror deserved more than half-warm leftovers and damp walls. I waited a week, let them carry on watching TV late at night, throwing parties without inviting me, making plans for a bathroom I wouldn't be allowed to use. Then I had a letter delivered, proper, official, hand-signed by my lawyer, an eviction notice. Daniel came barreling downstairs that evening, face flushed. What the hell is this? I stayed seated on the bed, folding a clean towel. You asked for my signature. I said, never thought I'd use it. You can't do this. I can, I said calmly. I have. Liana appeared behind him, phone in hand. This is illegal. You're our mother, for God's sake. Exactly, I replied. Not your servant, not your burden, and not invisible. Daniel's voice cracked. Where are we supposed to go? I stood, looked at both of them, these two adults who once depended on me, who now saw me as an obstacle. You should have thought of that when you left me in the basement like mold. The sheriff came 5 days later. I didn't need him to force anything, but it helped them take it seriously. Liana cried as she packed. Daniel barely looked at me. Max, he stood by the doorway, holding his backpack, confused. Grandma, why do we have to go? I knelt and held his small hands. Because sometimes grown-ups make mistakes. They have to learn from them. He hugged me hard. I almost cried, almost. But I'd done enough crying in that basement. The morning after they left, I walked upstairs like it was the first time. No one hovering, no fake smiles, no rules. The sunlight spilled into the living room, warming the floorboards that had once creaked beneath Daniel's quick steps and Liana's. Stiletto heels. I stood there in silence for a long time. It wasn't joy I felt. Not exactly just air, room to breathe. I opened the kitchen cabinets and reorganized them the way I liked. Salt near the stove, sugar in the second shelf. I put my favorite teacup beside the kettle, the one Thomas gave me on our 25th anniversary. It had been boxed away for years. I made myself breakfast. Real breakfast, toast, omelet, tea with cardamom. Ate it at the dining table, not on my lap or beside a boiler. I didn't rush. There was no one left to avoid. The neighbors noticed, of course. In our quiet street, change always traveled faster than sound. Mrs. Core came by first. She tapped on the door gently and held up a Tupperware container. "Pula," she said. "Thought you might want some company." We sat on the porch. She didn't. Ask where they'd gone. She didn't have to. I heard shouting, she murmured. I nodded. There was a lot of that. She studied me carefully, and now I smiled. "Peace." She patted my hand, eyes shining. "Took you long enough." The weeks passed quietly. I dusted rooms that hadn't felt my touch in years. Rearranged. The living room, donated old things to charity. Hung up new curtains. One afternoon, I stood in front of the hall mirror. Same woman, but different eyes. Not defeated. Not desperate. Present. Daniel tried calling once. I let it ring, then he came by. I saw him through the peephole. Clean shirt, no tie, hollow eyes. The same boy who used to wait for me to come home with bakery leftovers now looked like he didn't know what to say. I opened the door but didn't step aside, Ma. I raised my hand. "Don't." He looked down. "We didn't mean to hurt you. It just got busy." Busy enough to forget my name. My birthday. The years I gave you. "I'm sorry." "I know," I said. A long pause. "I miss home," he whispered. "This is still home," I said softly. "But not yours. Not anymore." His eyes welled up. I thought he might beg, but he didn't. He turned and left. That's when I let the tears come. Not for what I lost, but for what he threw away. Later that week, I opened the mailbox to find a flyer from a local community center. They were looking for volunteers, specifically elders willing to mentor younger women or help organize events for seniors. I read it twice. Then I picked up the phone a month later. This house, my house, had changed again. The basement. Cleaned, painted, warm dot. Not for me anymore. For others, I opened it once a week for women like me. Those who had been pushed out, talked down to, tucked away like shame. We had tea. Shared stories. Helped one another write resumes, apply for housing, even leave relationships that had turned cold. I named it the Light Room, because no one deserves to live in the dark. Mrs. Core became my closest friend. We planted roses in the front yard together. She came over every Tuesday, without fail, with something warm in foil. We'd sit by the window, watching the world go by, and every so often, I'd catch myself smiling, not because I had one, but because I had remembered my worth. 1 year later, I sold the wedding ring, not because I stopped loving Thomas, no, never that, but because it was time to let go of the symbols that no longer anchored me. With the money, I bought a long wooden dining table, 12 chairs, matching teacups, a proper space dot because more women had started coming to the Light Room. Widows, single mothers, grandmothers left behind like old furniture, and I wanted them to sit at a real table, not fold-out chairs and paper plates. We shared more than tea and biscuits. We shared silence. 2, the kind that follows years of being unheard, and laughter. The kind that bubbles up slowly, like it forgot it existed. I woke up every morning now with sunlight on my face. It's not a flickering bulb. I walked freely, sang while I cooked, and grew tomatoes on the back porch. Tomatoes that Max used to love. Sometimes, when I picked them, I thought of him. His gap-toothed smile. His little voice saying, "Grandma, make ketchup." I missed him more than I could say. But I'd made my peace. Daniel came back a second time. He didn't knock. Just stood by the sidewalk, holding Max's hand. I watched from the window. He looked older, tired. Humbled, I opened the door and waited. Max saw me first. His face lit up. "Grandma!" I opened my arms. He ran into them. Without hesitation. I held him tightly, breathing in the scent of warm shampoo and crayons. Daniel approached slowly. I thought he should see you." I nodded. "He always has a place here." He looked around, his voice quiet. "You've really fixed the place up. No basement living," I said simply. He lowered his gaze. "I didn't know how bad it had gotten. You didn't want to know." He sighed. "I deserve that." There was silence. Not angry, just real. "Thank you," he said at last. For not hardening, I gave a small, tired smile. I did harden, Daniel, but I didn't break. Max hugged me tighter. "I want to visit again." I kissed the top of his head. "You always can." Daniel turned to leave, and for once I didn't watch him go. That evening, the women came over. We brewed ginger tea, baked cookies. Someone brought a violin, and one of the younger girls danced. The basement, once my prison, echoed with music and life. Mrs. Cord nudged me as we watched. "You're glowing. Alive." I said, and that was more than enough. People still ask me why I didn't fight them sooner. Why I let myself be pushed around for so long. The truth. Sometimes love makes you soft, and sometimes it blinds you. But the moment I remembered who I was, who I always had been, I took everything back. They put me in a basement now. I live in the light, and they're still out there, searching for home. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, share it with someone who needs strength today, and leave a comment. Your voice matters too.